Hi YouTubers out there, it's Fortune Cookie 45LC coming to you with the 1911. Now of course this year, the year 2012, it's 101 years since John Browning submitted this design to the U.S. Army and the U.S. government. Very successful. Served the U.S. for over 80 years and served well. There are a lot of doughboys and G.I. Joes and Vietnam tunnel rats that owe a great deal to this piece of ordnance. And certainly today there are a lot of people who really rave about this design. Now certainly back in the days where this pistol served the U.S. forces, the tolerances were a little bit on the loose side, and this helped the reliability tremendously. It's a very reliable pistol, and it served well for its intended purpose. Today, a lot of precision target shooters and competitors have tolerances worked down to a very small degree with this pistol, and the reliability is maintained because the gunsmiths that work on this pistol know how to make it run. But there are some problems with it. Now even though that today many people rave about this pistol, there are some detractors. There are some detractors of this pistol, and one of the complaints is the grip angle makes the pistol point downward, and certainly that's true if a person wants to bow the wrist. By bowing the wrist in a little bit of a limp wrist kind of hold, this pistol will point downward, but if the wrist is kept firm, it's not. And other 1911 haters say that if you put your forefinger along the frame here and use your middle finger on the trigger, the problem is as the pistol recoils, the finger on the slide stop causes the slide stop to be pushed out the other side, and you get a malfunction. So that these 1911 detractors say that you can't use that technique. Well, in over 40 years of going to the range and shooting, I haven't seen anyone use that technique where the forefinger goes along the barrel, along the frame here, and the middle finger is used on the trigger. I haven't seen anyone do that, with one exception, and that gentleman lost his forefinger in an accident, so he has no forefinger, and he has to use the middle finger to work the trigger. But except for him, no one shoots that way, and I seriously doubt that any of you YouTubers out there, or the vast majority of you YouTubers out there, don't use the middle finger on the trigger either. That's not how the pistol is designed, and very few pistols are designed that way. So those detractors are in their own little world. Certainly if the U.S. government had problems with malfunctions caused by this slide stop pin sticking out being pushed through, they would have certainly done something and insisted upon a cure for that. So for over 80 years this pistol served well, with no one complaining about that. So the test of time serves us right. However, the 1911 is not without certain flaws. And even though I fully endorse the 1911 and are among the ravers of this pistol, there are some flaws. Let's go over those. It's all about the magazine. So here you see a couple of GI magazines. And the problem with the magazine is this. Notice that there is a little space between the top cartridge in this fully loaded magazine and the second cartridge. There's a little space there. When John Bryan designed this, here's what happens. We'll hold this so that it's level. The cartridge is level. The slide comes back, and as it comes forward, it strips the top cartridge, and here's what happens. Watch this. It'll push the top cartridge. Did you see that? The cartridge wants to go downward. And this won't happen. This won't happen with a partially loaded magazine. But when this cartridge goes downward, comes out of the magazine, it actually goes downward. See, it went downward. Now there's no space between those two cartridges like there was before. So let's go ahead and reverse that. Notice how there's the angle, and as it's stripping out of the magazine, it goes downward. Now 1911 was designed to have a feed ramp in the frame so that the cartridge, when it goes downward, the nose hits that feed ramp, and then the nose bounces up and hits the hood of the barrel. Now the barrel has slid down and angled downward because of the link, and this cartridge now bounces off the feed ramp and then bounces up and hits the inside of the hood, and then it has to bounce again before it can go into the chamber. This happens to be an 8-round GI magazine. But let's look at some other ones. Here's an aftermarket magazine, and let's see if I can show this. Once again, you see there is a space between the top cartridge and the second cartridge, so that when the slide comes forward and strips this out, watch this. See how it goes downward? That cartridge goes downward before it comes out of the magazine. See there? It goes downward. I'm not pushing it down, I'm just pushing it forward. The cartridge actually goes downward. This is a flaw of the 1911 design. That cartridge has to come out, goes downward, hits the feed ramp in the frame, and bounces off that. It doesn't just slide up off that, but it bounces upward as the cartridge makes a very violent twist, and then the nose of the cartridge hits underneath the hood, and then it makes another violent twist, and then goes into the barrel. This is Winchester Black Talon. You don't see too many of those around anymore. So you see, Chip McCormick realized that, so he tried to fix that by having this follower have an upward slant, because the upward slant is to keep the nose up. We're not talking aviation here, but keeping the nose up is not a bad idea for flying planes or for cartridge coming out of the magazine. So here's a Chip McCormick magazine. Chip McCormick. 10-rounder, of course, is fully loaded, but let's look at this. Notice the gap between the top cartridge and the second cartridge. Same problem. So even though you have a follower that's got the elevated end on it, by the time you get a fully loaded magazine, that doesn't do anything. It doesn't get there. So once again, let's see if this one goes down. Are you seeing that? And then as the slide comes forward, there it goes, it's coming out. But by then it's hit the feed ramp in the frame and bounced up. Black Talon. So this is a problem with the 1911 magazine, and it doesn't show up if the tolerances are real loose. Like kind of like an AK-47. You have real loose tolerances, it just runs. Well, the 1911 with loose tolerances will run just dandy. It's just when you tighten the tolerances up, then you need a gunsmith to make these things work without jamming, because of this problem. And it's a recognized problem. You don't see it. I don't see it around YouTube. So is this 1911 problem only? This magazine is for a Smith & Wesson Model 645, and notice it has the same gap right there. Top cartridge, second cartridge. That gap is guaranteed. Now once again, we'll hold it so the cartridge is the level. Slide comes forward, starts to, look what happens. It goes downward. Now does this make the 1911 a bad pistol? No, it still work. And when it's properly manufactured, it'll still work. And the reliability will still be pretty good. Very good, in fact. But every once in a while you get that jam where the cartridge is kind of caught there at an angle. It's just stuck there and the slide is jammed up against it, and you look in there and the cartridge is at an angle. Well, guess what caused that? But it doesn't have to be. This is a 45 caliber ACP, Smith & Wesson M&P magazine, loaded with the same Black Talon. Notice, are you looking at this? There's no space between the second cartridge and the top cartridge. So Smith & Wesson M&P, now watch this very carefully. The slide comes forward, starts pushing the round out. Are you seeing that cartridge dropping, that nose dropping? It's not dropping. It's coming straight out. See, I'm not changing the angle there. See that? It's not dropping because the second cartridge in there is supporting the nose of the first cartridge. And that goes for all the cartridges in the magazine. So Smith & Wesson M&P, which is a polymer frame, there's no feed ramp in the frame, but there's a feed ramp on the end of the barrel. Look at it from this side. That looks pretty level, right? Now watch this. As I push that forward, it's not changing the angle. You see that? Now it's going to pop out pretty soon. So what happens is the barrel tips down, and the nose of the cartridge is already lined up with the chamber. It's not going down, doesn't need a feed ramp in the frame. And so this thing goes in and it's almost a straight line. It just barely kisses off that feed ramp on the edge of the chamber, and it goes right in. Smith & Wesson M&P 45 polymer pistol. Here's a 40 caliber magazine. This happens to be a SIG. Notice there's no gap here. No gap. This thing comes straight out. There, you see that? There's no change in the angle of the cartridge as it's coming out because it's supported by the second round. And it's still supported, you see? So if you're going to buy a pistol with utmost reliability, maybe you like to do that. You like to look at this. Now we all know what a Glock magazine looks like. Look at that in there. Do you see any space in there between the second cartridge and the first? And the answer is no. So once again, watch this comes out without any change in the angle at all. Barrel tips down. The nose of the cartridge is already lined up with the chamber. It just kisses off the lower part and goes right into the barrel. Couple that with the Glock uses the same kind of loose tolerances that made the 1911 so reliable, but the Glock loose tolerances are in the chamber of the barrel. That's why the Glock is so reliable. You have this situation where it's almost a straight line feed, plus the chamber has tolerances in there. That's why when you fire the Glock pistol, the brass is actually kind of expanded a lot because the tolerances are loose in the chamber. The barrel's got good tolerances, so it's accurate, but it's got a loose chamber for reliability, plus this principle. So, and the other flaws that some of the 1911 haters out there are pointing out really don't hold water. But this particular flaw actually does hold some water. And it's all because you have this kind of lack of support for the nose of the cartridge being fed. And it's endemic for all 1911 magazines. Go ahead, pull your magazine out and see if that's true, that you have a gap here. Go ahead and give this test. Push it down, push it, and see how that nose drops. See how it drops down till it touches the second cartridge? The angle has lowered. Try this and see for yourself if you think this is a problem or not. And why do you think John Browning put a feed ramp in the frame? Just for this reason. But it worked. And it worked well for over 80 years, 85 years. And in fact, today, there are a lot of special forces that still carry a 1911. Why? Because it'll still work. But when it's properly worked up, it's still a very reliable system. It's just that perhaps the Glock or others like it, like the Smith & Wesson M&P, don't require any kind of special work. They already have straight line feed. They already have loose chambers, and this gives you reliability without having to go to all the attention that the modern 1911 does need. Thank you, YouTubers. What do you think?